Hello all and welcome to this Kilowatt Station YouTube video. Today we're going to do a quick walk around of my 2019 Chevy Bolt and determine is this the best budget EV on the market right now. This is my 2019 Chevy Bolt Premier and we're just doing a quick walk around of the exterior and then we'll move on to the interior. So the Premier adds on the exterior only really adds one thing, and it's these wheels that look quite nice on the car in my opinion. The LT model, which is the base model, had a more basic looking wheel. You do get keyless entry on all four doors, which is a rarity to find. I do believe the Gen 2 Bolts only have it on the front doors. Coming around on the driver's side, it's largely the same. The front driver's side is where your charge port is. You just push it open. Here's your CCS1 connector. Not all Gen 1 Chevy Bolts had CCS connectors. It was actually an add-on for, I believe, $750. And if you do not get CCS at the time that the Bolt was made, this is down here is just blank. And you cannot retrofit that option. So while we're on the outside, I'll also show off what's under the front end. You open it and you just pull this. Then the latch is down below, right above the Chevy emblem. Lift it up and see if I can get this with one hand. There's a prop rod because there's nothing interesting under here. No front trunk, just all electronics. That said, this car has 200 horsepower. It's front wheel drive and 266 pound-feet of torque. You can also notice it honked there. It automatically locks when the key is no longer in the vehicle, which is a nice feature. Let me close this. Moving around the rear of the car, you'll see, and this is actually a quirk of the vehicle, I'll probably put a clip in. So the tail lights are actually fixed to the hatch, which according to federal regulation, you can't have tail lights on a moving body piece. So if you open the trunk, the lights will shift from here down to the bumper. But anyway, opening this up, you've got a pretty decent sized trunk, and this car's biggest feature is underneath this floor, you have even more storage. And so this is pretty deep. You've got enough room. You see I've got a stroller in here. And then underneath that is some more storage, and that's about big enough for a charger, say. So let's move on to the inside. All right, so we're now inside my Chevy Bolt. You're actually joining the back seat to start. I just want to show off the legroom. So I am behind where I sit as a driver. I am 6 foot tall. I have plenty of legroom, plenty of knee room. The seats back here are also heated, which is a nice touch. However, headroom is a little limited for someone my height. Fine for short trips, wouldn't want to be necessarily back here on a long road trip. In the back, you also get 2 USB Type A ports, and then on the back passenger seat, there is a map pocket. You also have a fold-down center armrest with cup holders, although it's a little hard to get down with the car seat. Speaking of car seat, I just want to show off, this is a rear-facing car seat. It is behind the front passenger seat, which this seat is all the way back, and there is still plenty of room between it and the seat. You've got lower latch anchors in all 3 positions. However, I wouldn't probably put more than 2 car seats back here. It'd be pretty tight with 3. All right, before we get in the front, just want to talk about, so this being a GM vehicle, there are definitely some places they cheaped out, unfortunately. So this door card, for example, is all hard plastic, but they did put this nice little white touch here, and then this panel that matches the dash, and it's this cool kind of triangle texture. But getting in, this is where we start seeing some of the changes between the LT and the Premier model. So for example, on the Premier you get these leather seats, which this model is gray with red stitching. It's also going to play a video real quick that, the little wake up animation. But you get a leather heated steering wheel. Let me start it so I can flip it over. You do get heated steering wheel. This car has most of the safety features. You get lane keep assist, you get forward collision warning, but you do have blind spot monitoring. And then you get a 10.1-inch touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. We'll talk more about that in a minute. On the Premier, you also get a rear view mirror camera that you can just flip back and get your normal mirror if you would rather use that. I love this feature because it basically eliminates any visibility issues out of the back when you have cargo in the trunk or people in the back seat. You have a massive dashboard, and then this little cutout up in front is not for a heads-up display, unfortunately. It is the forward collision warning, so if it thinks you're going to hit someone, it starts flashing a red LED and it bounces off a windshield. Coming lower in the center console, you've got your 2 cup holders. You do have a pretty decent sized storage pocket down here with a 12-volt outlet and then a little cubby. And then you've got your your Prindle, sorry. So push for park. There's a button on the side, pull down for drive. That opens up L. L is your one pedal driving in this vehicle. You just swap it down, push and hold up for neutral, and then up and over for reverse. When you put it in reverse, you'll see another feature the Premier gets that the LT doesn't is a 360 camera. Now, on the 2017 through 2019 model year cars, this is not an amazing quality camera. However, in 2020, they replaced all the cameras with an HD system, and it looks much, much better. They also updated the rear view mirror at that time as well. So I'm going to put it back in park, and we'll talk about some of the features on this infotainment system. So I'm also going to turn this off so it's not blowing at me. So one of the things on the Gen 1 cars is this infotainment system is not amazing. It's pretty laggy, especially by modern standards, but it does do everything you would need it to do. So we're just going to go to the home screen, and you can kind of see the lag there. So your home screen, this is customizable, but I've got mine set to show radio stuff on the left, full charge info, delayed charging, and then charge limit for 120 volt. So we'll start looking at the EV menus here. So you get an energy detail screen that shows you how many kilowatt hours you've used since you last full charged, how far you've gone, and then what has used that amount of power. If you click over, you get a little range impact screen. So it shows you, like, I've gained on this drive so far 8 miles of range because of my technique, but I've lost 3.6 miles due to terrain and 10 miles due to my climate settings and 5 miles due to outside temperature. And then the final screen here is like an efficiency history trend line. So when I last drove it, I was averaging, it looks like almost 7 miles to kilowatt hour. And then just red line is your average for the trip so far. You can also access it anytime using the energy button down here at the bottom. You also get flow info. So this will show you, like, when you're driving, it shows the power coming from the battery to the wheels. When you're regenning, it shows from the wheels to the battery. It's kind of just like a little gimmick. Then you get your charging menu, which is where you can set your charge limit. So this is on 120 volt. You can set 8 amps or 12 amps. You also get to set immediate and departure charging here if you're at when you're plugged in or at a low charge state. You also set your target charge level here. So what you get a home and away option. My away option is currently set to 100%. My home option is set to 85%. And then it shows you a little projected range once it's fully charged. Information is the screen we started in. Then charging options, you get this. You can again set your charge limit. You can set to display your charge times based on charge station, which is a 240 volt station, or portable cord, which is the 120 volt that comes with the car. You can do location-based charging. This is where you set up home and away. These are your departure charging settings. Again, you can also set up utility rate charging if you have a time of use program. The energy summary pop-up is when you turn the car off, it'll show a little summary of how your driving has been so far. You can set it to honk or not when you plug it in. You can set the alarm to go off if the charge cord is unplugged. It'll alert you if the power is lost, and then you can set up for if you are almost out of charge and you want to shut the radio down. This infotainment screen is also where you'll find your controls for your heated seats, as well as your climate controls, so you can turn it on or off, recirc, heat, AC. You get single zone climate in this vehicle, your temperature knob, fan control, all this is pretty standard. You'll also find your sport mode button, which really just changes kind of your throttle mapping. And then traction control off, which if you press and hold it, it does also disable StabiliTrak. So you can fully disable the the traction control in this car. So the saving grace for this radio being as slow as it is it does support wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And once you're in Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, It does work pretty well. So I'm going to plug the phone in real quick. And we're in. Now, I don't have awesome cell service, so that's not the car's fault. That's my fault. But once you're in, Apple CarPlay is pretty responsive. It works as you expect it to. And once you're, as a little note, if you're in the energy screen, you were just looking at something, you can press and hold this home button, and it will take you straight back into Apple CarPlay. I find that much easier than trying to, say, come up here and hit the menu, and then hit Apple CarPlay while I'm driving. Coming back over to the steering wheel, these buttons on the left control your cruise control. This car does not have adaptive cruise, which is a little odd to me because you can go in the menu here and see that the car will tell you the following distance from the vehicle in front of you, which in my mind would mean it could modulate the speed based on that. But I digress, it doesn't have it. You also have your heated steering wheel button here, as well as your lane keep assist. This button in the middle controls your forward collision alert. You change the distance before it alerts you. Down below, you have your favorites or next track and previous track buttons. On the right, you have your voice control button, which if you press and hold, will trigger Siri. You also get your end call or mute button, and then these buttons on the right control your driver's screen. So looking at the driver's screen, you can see we have, on the left, you have your range estimate, and then it also gives you a max estimate and a minimum estimate. So your max estimate is if you were driving as efficiently as possible, and then your minimum is if you were not driving efficiently. So in the screen, you have your trip computer, you have your tire pressures, you have an average speed, a timer. This is that following distance I just showed. And then a blank screen, and you can click over to the left and you have audio options. You can do your phone, OnStar navigation, layout, and then some just general options like miles per hour, kilometers per hour, etc. On the right side of this gauge cluster, you have your power being used. So we can see right now we're drawing 1 kilowatt just at idle, but as you drive, you'll see it go up into the power. And then as you regen, you'll see it go down, and it'll show you, you're using 120 kilowatts to accelerate, or you're regenning 50 kilowatt. Also on the steering wheel, coming back, you have on the back side here, on the left side, a regen paddle. So you can pull that at any time while you're driving into regen on the demand. And in addition, you can have it in L mode, which is one pedal. And so you can be regenning in one pedal, pull the paddle, and then get even more regen up to the maximum of 70 kilowatt. You also have on the back of the steering wheel on the right side a volume up and a volume down button. Finally, in the interior, you have two USB ports for your radio, and then a wireless charger that honestly is not very great. Just unplug my phone. You can see this is an iPhone 14, and it is a tight squeeze. It does work, maybe. There it goes. But it's in there. And so I use my daily is an iPhone 13 Pro Max. It does not fit in the wireless charger. And then you get your center console. It does slide forward and back. But so that's about it for the interior. You also of course, you have your glove box. And as I was mentioning before, you've got this textured material here that's kind of got a triangle and it glistens in the sun. And this white on the dash is actually a white paint, and it's metallic, and so it also sparkles. This is my biggest annoyance in this interior. It blinds you when the sun hits it and you're driving. But otherwise, that's it. I think this is a fairly decent interior for the money, but let's get out and drive it. All right, you guys join me now. I'm driving my Bolt EV. And so I've had this car for about 9 months now. I've put almost 25,000 miles on it. And in the time I've owned it, I've only had to do general maintenance, washer fluid, and tire rotations. I did put new tires on it around 5,000 miles ago, so that would have been around 48,000 miles. Not that they necessarily needed to be replaced. The OEM tires still probably had a couple, maybe 10,000 miles of tread wear on them. I wasn't super happy with the grip I was getting on them though, so I went ahead and just replaced them. That said, the car drives super well. This car has one of the better brake blending situations that I've seen in a lot of EVs, especially in the EVs from this time period when this car was released. It does a really good job of blending in friction brakes and regen. You get in drive, when you let the gas, it coasts. It will eventually stop, but you get minimal regen. And then in L mode or one pedal driving, you get full regen as soon as you let off the gas, in addition to being able to add to it with your your paddle on the steering wheel here. In an L mode, it will bring you to a stop and then hold you, whereas in drive, it will bring you down to about 3 miles an hour and then let you creep. So you're just going to drive a little bit longer, but ultimately I've been super happy with this car. I'm happy with the way it drives. Sometimes the suspension's a little crashy. It's one of those things. It's a compact car. It has a short wheelbase, and so it kind of exacerbates bumps. But overall, it's nothing too bad, and it's a great cruiser. I use it to commute. My commute's about 52 miles every day, and I mean, it just soaks up the miles for that. So I'm about to pull back off the highway, and then I'll give you some final thoughts. At the beginning of the video, I mentioned that I believe this might be the best value EV on the market currently. And so now we're going to dig into why that might be true. So real quick, just going through speeds and feeds, because I'm not sure if I've mentioned all of these in the video yet. This car has a 66 kilowatt hour battery, maybe 60 kilowatt. We'll talk about that in a minute. It's kind of the elephant in the room. With that, you get an EPA estimated range of 239 miles. Now, real world is going to be less. EPA testing on EVs is not hyper realistic for what actually happens when you drive. In the summer months, you're looking at around 180, 190 miles. Winter months, it's going to be less, just depending on how cold it is the battery warm, etc. Car's front wheel drive, 200 horsepower, 266 pound-feet of torque. You get a 30 amp onboard charger, so it's 7.2 kilowatts at 240 volt. On the pre-facelift cars, they did upgrade it, I believe, to a 48 amp charger on the Gen 2 Bolts. And then you have your DC fast charging, which is optional on the Gen 1 Bolts. And I would highly recommend not purchasing one that doesn't have the option, because I'd rather have it, never use it, than not have it and never be able to get it. Because you cannot retrofit it. There's too much componentry change. It's just not worth it. Now, the DC fast charging on this car is pretty slow by modern standards. It has a peak rate of 55 kilowatt. However, for me, that's not a deal killer, because I didn't buy this car to be some awesome, amazing road tripper. I bought it as a commuter car that I maybe sometimes take on long trips. And I don't mind the long stops because I stretch my legs, get something to drink, get something to eat, whatever. It doesn't really bother me. Now, the elephant in the room, and I've got my notes in my hand because I don't want to get any of this wrong, is the battery recall that they did on all Chevy Bolts manufactured from 2017 to 2022. So, due to a potential manufacturing issue, GM had to recall all of the Bolts due to a handful of fires. And in that process, the initial remedy was they would replace batteries in all the cars. And that's where I mentioned 60 or 66 kilowatt hour batteries. So as part of the recall, by the time the recall came out, they had stopped building the 60 kilowatt hour batteries. And so every car that got its battery replaced would get the 66 kilowatt hour battery. So it's about a 10% gain. And that's kind of where you get that additional range from, is that you have, 6 kilowatt hours more to use of energy capacity. Anyway, so on 2017 to 2019 model year cars, every one of them is eligible for a new battery. If it hasn't already gotten its new battery, it can get a new battery. Now, on the 2020 and 2021 model year vehicles, it gets a little hairier. Up until about summer of 2023, those cars would have gotten a new battery under the recall. However, GM released in the summer of 2023 the advanced diagnostics software that you could go to your dealership and they would install. And what this software does is limits you to 80% charge for 6,200 miles. In that 6,200 miles, as long as nothing is found wrong with the car, after you've driven that far and there's been no issues, the charge limit automatically lifts. You can charge to 100%, and the recall is considered complete. If any issue is found in that time, it will throw a check engine light. Well, I guess it's not really a check engine light. There's no engine, but it'll throw a light. It'll give you a message on the screen. You'll take it to your dealership. You're pretty much guaranteed a new battery at that point. So when you're looking at buying one of these, it's very worthwhile to go to the GM recall website, put in the VIN number of the car you're looking at, and check out the warranties on it, because that's pretty much your only way of telling as an end user if your car has a new battery or not. A car that hasn't had its battery replaced has a 8-year, 100,000 mile battery warranty. So if you're looking at a car and it shows that its warranty expires at 100,000 miles, then it hasn't had its battery replaced. But if you're looking at a car that has had its battery replaced, you'll see in the GM recall website, it'll say Bolt battery limited part warranty, and will say expires and will be 100,000 miles over wherever the battery was installed. So for example, the one I'm looking at here, the battery was installed at around 31,000 miles. So the warranty expires at 131,000 miles. They also reset the date as part of this, so it's 8 years from the time the battery was installed. And so with that out of the way, we'll talk about the final component to, is this a good budget EV? And that's price. Currently, you can find Bolts easily anywhere in the country, low miles, we're talking 30,000, 20,000 miles, for 15 grand or less. And 15 grand, in my opinion, you get a lot of car for 15 grand. And that's not even considering yet that there's also the potential for a $4,000 federal EV tax credit on used EVs. And so if you're looking at a $15,000 car and you qualify for the full $4,000 rebate, I'm not an accountant, I can't promise that you'll qualify. You're looking at now $11,000 for a lightly used EV with a lot of options and a good amount of tech. To me, it's a no-brainer. It's a huge bargain. And if you can live with some of the limitations, you're slow charging, you're lower than maybe a modern EV amount of range, and you can deal with stuff like you don't get adaptive cruise, but what you do get is an excellent commuter car. It's a no-brainer to me. I mean, that's why I have one. It made perfect sense for where I was in my life and what what my family needed. We bought one, and we have no regrets on it. So hopefully, if you're watching this video, maybe you're in the market for an EV and I've helped you kind of solidify your decision, and maybe you'll end up in a Chevy Bolt. Maybe you'll watch this video and decide, no, that's not for me. And there's other good EV bargains. I mean, you can get Tesla Model 3s pretty cheap now, although usually those have much higher mileage. You can get Hyundai Konas. They've got Kia Niro EVs. There's tons of options. Do your shopping around. But those are my thoughts on the Chevy Bolt EV. And hopefully you've learned something from this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Maybe you'll subscribe and leave a comment if you have anything else you want to see of this car. I'd like to do a charging curve on it. Maybe if we can ever get a nice weather day, maybe do a but good weather range test from 80% to 10%. But otherwise, leave a comment with any other suggestions you have, and have a great day.